Welcome to Transforming Work with Sophie Wade, exploring the future of work. Find out what's going on, disruptions, evolutions, opportunities, challenges, and interventions in our multi-generational distributed organizations. With a new tech and talent focus, discover what you need to know to stay upskilled and relevant and ensure your business keeps its competitive edge. Sophie investigates the promise and reality of the future of work now and as we look ahead. She interviews people who are changing work experiences and practices and shares how we can each transition smoothly and successfully to effective and more productive new ways of working.
Hi. In this episode, I'm reflecting on the past year with you and considering what we have gleaned, gained, and got hung up about, especially during this fall, the first full post-pandemic back to business after the summer season, with most countries ramping up for a generally unhindered holiday season. As we muse and mull, let us also recognize the implications of the new world that we have been launched into. If you have been listening to this podcast over the past 18 months, first of all, thank you. You are familiar with my perspective that we are now in a new era of business and work. If you are a listener who joined recently, welcome, and thank you too. For you, understanding a compiled assessment of recent history, I believe, is beneficial to be able to review 2022 in context, and, of course, for orientation purposes, as you start looking towards January and the new year. For the short recap, with an accompanying visual in mind, the digital genie emerged fully from his lamp when crisis conditions caused us to install and utilize more digital communications platforms interconnecting us and our business operations, as we also shift to cloud storage strategies and quickly redesigned processes to empower distributed workers. We also automated more tasks to reduce handoffs and other manual steps on the front line and elsewhere to keep people safer. We then were able to focus on the more challenging, complex issues we were facing under pressure. All in all, we rapidly increased our use of more sophisticated digital systems and tools. These urgent responses and integrations were significant and essential. They also have a lasting impact. This genie is not going back in his lamp. Nobody is uninstalling any platforms or regressing to previous workflows from new streamlined ones. The world of business and work has made a step change up onto a new trajectory, which we adopted during the pandemic, usually not suspecting the long-term implications. Less extreme and volatile now, most general living conditions have normalized. People are using the trains, subways, and buses regularly. You may have been to a concert or conference recently. You are flying for business and pleasure again, and your in-person retail activities have increased. As restrictions lifted, we are better able to see that, in fact, our environments don't look or feel as much like 2019 as we expected or perhaps hoped. Many attributes of our recent experiences continue. For example, our personal lives are notably more digitally facilitated and fulfilled as QR codes reign, contactless payments dominate, telemedicine services persist, automated analytics deliver preferred choices, and online order management becomes relatively seamless. And for your business, aren't the processes that were redesigned in conjunction with operational digitization running more smoothly? The reality has been that often new technology integration has required specific attention to adapt workflow that was no longer adequate. An update had been needed for a while, but it hadn't been prioritized or required too many other interdependent changes. Crisis conditions compelled organizations to make many overdue modernization moves. Identifying the numerous major and minor technology-related implementations and updates your company undertook since March 2020 and the accompanying ripple effects and changes, it may be worthwhile to acknowledge overtly the broad-based and widely accepted benefits of at least the majority of new workflows and advances achieved by digital transformation initiatives. I warrant more tweaks and iterations are likely needed, especially to take advantage of additional innovative software. Or there has been a new assessment of how workflow could be reconfigured again based on further thinking, new customer behaviors, or other changes in the overall business approach. Perhaps you have introduced more advanced tools on the front line so you can get faster feedback about customers' needs, or to find out how new offerings are faring that are being tested. Maybe you have more integrated relationships with vendors or new partners you're working with, relying on cloud storage and access so that you and they can be closely involved, sharing data back and forth to stay on top of potential supply chain issues. These are the aspects to be reviewing and optimizing for right now. But going back to analog, I don't see it happening. What's my point? It is critical to absorb the reality of where we are now to be able to assess how things went this past year. So if your business is to stay competitive with your customers and your employees, it means recognizing the attributes of the current operational landscape, looking through the lens of your augmented, digitalized approach, and seeing your company and business on the new growth trajectory, having taken multiple steps forward, especially to meet the changing needs of your customers. And what about your customers? In fact, who are they now? Does your business target the same people as you did in 2019 or 2020? Your products and services may have morphed or been added to, affecting whom you serve as well as whom you want to serve. How recently was there a good analysis to assess who your best customers are, however they are measured? They likely have a few different habits from pre-pandemic times, which may have affected your business in a number of ways. Has someone been mapping these changes over the past 2 years? Alignment of your offerings with your optimal customer types can be a moving target these days, just as we recognize that we each and all are exploring, testing, and refining our own new working and living flow, movements, and habits. It is useful to be aware of this ongoing evolution during any evaluation process, keeping an open mind while reviewing which, what, and how your customers are served to keep up with their changing digital behaviors, other activities, and needs. What were you trying to achieve this year and this quarter in terms of growing your customer base and increasing sales per customer? Where were you most and least successful? What was effective and what wasn't? Any thoughts yet as to why? Was your offering well matched demographically and geographically with prospective buyers? Were sales folks listening empathetically to prospects to get a good understanding of how to connect with them, find a match with their pain points and convert them? Or else deliver to customers and service ongoing needs with new upgrades and offerings? Did sales teams have the updated data they needed, or were they having to rely on previous patterns and perceptions of your products and services? And far beyond sales, was everyone internally agreed and aligned about the customer journey from end to end, working coherently and seamlessly together across different departments with the same vision? I doubt it, since that's hard to achieve in much less trying circumstances. So taking a step back, overall, how did the year go? Particularly if results were not stellar or were reasonable, but perhaps not sustainable when so much is in flux, when many of the fundamentals of the operating environment have shifted. This is the moment to be taking time to check and possibly rethink or reimagine the basics of your business, if it hasn't been done already, as well as other mechanics and logistics. This is the moment to consider if certain core aspects might warrant a makeover, or another makeover. In most countries, we are managing COVID-19, and this final quarter of 2022, most of us are feeling the pandemic is finally behind us. But let's remember that we didn't have solid ground at the beginning of the year, and if your business is sourcing from countries such as China, then you still need to be following COVID-19 restrictions and effects. It is important that your evaluation of the past year's achievements can be understood in context to make good use of learnings and trajectories to extrapolate for the year ahead. What were your expectations for quarter four? And how did they change as the months progressed and post-pandemic realities started to become clearer? Analyzing and synthesizing business data is more critical than ever this year, so you can understand the successes and the areas needing improvement to be prepared for 2023, which could be a big year. What epiphanies did you have, major and minor aha moments, during and since crisis conditions ended? Have you noticed any particular bottlenecks externally? or friction internally. For example, what kind of technology issues has your company faced? Have you or a colleague perhaps felt you didn't have the systems in place to be as competitive as you would like? Or newly integrated platforms haven't been fully or optimally utilized? Perhaps training to support new routines and tools hasn't been organized for everyone yet. What about supply chain related issues and hiccups? Were new contingency plans not quite able to deal with the challenges faced by downstream suppliers or upstream distributors? Have you established diversified vendors and partners for the long term? Have you aligned with particular partners to develop closer symbiotic relationships and cooperate strategically both to take advantage of new marketplace developments and to minimize or avoid further disruption risks? What about internal affairs? How about the talent situation at your organization? Do you sense that engagement and performance have generally been good or reasonable, even if unevenly distributed at times? Uncertainty undermines confidence, energy, and concentration. But a strong culture and sense of community connects and grounds people and reduces these negative effects. The Great Resignation certainly raged on in 2022 after 48 million people played musical chairs in the US in 2021. This year, over 4 million each month in the US, and 20% worldwide, estimated the World Economic Forum back in June, have been moving to new employers and destinations to get more money or space or flexibility, or achieve greater purpose or autonomy, or have less workplace hostility or stress, or time commuting. Looking back at 2019 in comparison to 21 and 22, how did turnover change for your team, group, or organization? Did more junior or senior people resign this year? In your group, were you able to discover the key reasons why departures increased or decreased? If you didn't ask HR before, or you didn't review the exit interviews, now's a good time. If fewer people left this year than last, that's great. But was the number still a bit higher than 2019? If you're not totally clear about the reasons or the outcome, lower turnover might be circumstantial or still be at an unsustainable level. You might also be blindsided if key factors shift that you aren't paying attention to. It's especially helpful to pay attention when millennials and Gen Zs leave, for different reasons. Gen Z's departures can be useful indicators of how well your organization is adapting for modernized future of work conditions, modifications that will benefit, are necessary for growth going forward. How so? Well, our youngest Gen Z employees are still so new to the labor force that their reactions and requests are not a coordinated and collective protest, but natural responses to what they experience, expressing evident talent needs relating to our new circumstances. For example, desires for workplace flexibility are to adjust to a more unpredictable business climate and be able to focus intently on dedicated work at home. Another example relates to mental health resources. Gen Zs are keen to ensure they will have support, recognizing their own anticipated needs and concerns as well as their peers. As for millennials, those with more than 5 years' experience were disproportionately represented in departures during 2021, according to the Motley Fool. A large percentage left to reduce burnout, whether from straining to produce results in an evolving marketplace under inflexible conditions, or from struggling through their working lives which were at conflict with their personal obligations and needs, never mind preferences and desires. For the first time, they, and many other people, have been questioning the role and meaning of work, which has been driving and determining their lives to the detriment of non-work activities rather than being complementary. This groundswell of desire from employees to reconfigure aspects of their working lives is natural and unlikely to abate, whether people are looking to live near to a parent to get childcare support as a young family, or living closer to the mountains to go hiking frequently, or else working intensively from home several days a week to avoid the commute. Recent data out of Stanford University that combined multiple studies shows that most people do not want to work from home every day. 20 to 29-year-olds prefer about 2.5 days a week, and the number rises to 3 days a week for 50 to 64-year-olds. There is an accompanying 3 to 5% increase in productivity. But most notably, some working from home reduced quit rates by 35%. Your company may well have already discovered the impact of small but meaningful accommodations such as workplace flexibility policies that enable different schedules and location options. And whether there is a tight labor market in your country or a recession ahead, it takes more time, energy, and effort to replace someone, costing at least 120% of the person's salary. Conversations with team members considering or on the point of departure may not be immediately fruitful. However, information gleaned can stave off other resignations and encourage internal shifts to attitudes, approaches, and policy tweaks that can go a long way to creating a working environment for 2023 where turnover levels decrease and do not destabilize future growth, while also improving engagement. Some departures are, of course, inevitable, and others may be deemed necessary, especially if hiring was perhaps overly enthusiastic, trying to take maximum advantage of periods of strong economic growth in 2021. How any departures were handled this year will affect future retention, performance, as well as ease of hiring. Some recent high-profile examples have shown that the how of layoffs matters very much now. In that respect, what about engagement and concerns about quiet quitting? Overall, are you aware that many people at your company have not been engaged in their work? Rather than focusing on any particular person or people, do you feel that working conditions, like those mentioned above, were healthy and encouraging employees to go above and beyond? As for your team, for those you try to engage, depending on their particular skills, strengths, and preferences, how did they perform in comparison to others to whom you didn't manage to give the same attention? Thinking back to individualized oversight and coaching support over the course of this year, what made the most difference? What worked for some people and not others? Every team member is different. To get a good sense of 2022, there are many questions to ask and answer. The main objective is to consider thoughtfully the highs and lows and different oscillations, especially the last few months of this year, and why your company achieved the results it did. During unpredictable conditions, sustaining results, never mind achieving growth, is not easy. Growth can be misinterpreted when so many interdependent factors are evolving. Therefore, greater analysis of changing circumstances is helpful, more than anything, to achieve more understanding. The principles that lay the foundation of sustainable, successful growth can then be prioritized when you turn to look to the new year. But first, it's time to get personal. Right before Thanksgiving, I got one of those unidentified non-COVID-19 flu-like viruses that have been swirling around. It kept me in bed for 5 days, which I don't think has ever happened to me before. It took almost 3 weeks to feel 100% again. Not fun. One outcome has been that I am intrigued by my new relationship with disease. I have a new, I would say, healthy respect for flu season and viruses and bacterial infections' potential impact. I will be much more attentive next fall. What about you? However invincible you feel, and whatever your personal views about how COVID-19 was handled, anyone you employ or manage has had their own experiences since March 2020, which could be extremely different from your own. As we move on, we all need to register, remember, and support each other's grief and other feelings and memories that linger. This is personal and this is business. Business got personal in March 2020, and that human connection at work isn't going away. And that's a good thing. I am myself very aware of the impact of difficult events that happen in parallel with our working lives that can cause us to pause involuntarily. A sudden loss in my close family this summer brought me to a mental standstill, and I needed time away to process. I then felt more connected to the experiences of so many during the pandemic. I wondered what they still felt like day to day, and how distracted they might suddenly become by an unexpected memory. and how empathetic management can be the support they need on those bad days. Bad days we all have. I certainly believe that the vulnerability we all felt at times during the crisis, those raw emotions that connected us then, were meaningful and allowed us to acknowledge and appreciate each other's full human dimensions and support each other fully as well. And that understanding and those connections are valuable and not to be forgotten as we get back to business, as business is personal too. It has been a long year. January seems like forever ago, when Omicron was raging. Remember that? We stumbled into this year somewhat disoriented by yet another strong viral wave. We have come a long way since then, and so much has happened and shifted. I don't think it helps us to pretend things are back to normal, as we are in a different place, with different circumstances, and our experiences have changed us too. We have learned so much about ourselves, each other, and our businesses. We have discovered what is possible and how much we can, and yes, must, work differently, whatever that means for your company, department, and team. It behooves me to mention now that my book, Empathy Works, The Key to Competitive Advantage in the New Era of Work, that came out in May this year, can be very helpful for understanding where we have been, what we've been through, where we are going, and how you can get there as easily as possible. This is an extraordinary moment of inflection, and with that realization, there is so much that you can embrace and build upon with new intelligence from this past year. Looking back first, we can all look forward to 2023. So, may I wish you very happy holidays and my very best for the new year. Thank you for listening to this episode and any others, and the fascinating and accomplished people whom I have been delighted to talk to. I invite you to check out more episodes during the break and hear so many valuable insights that could benefit you and your organization, whether about the increasing focus on skills, internal talent mobility, how to be a truly inclusive leader, what the office of the future looks like, why relationships matter so much in business, how we can learn from the disruption of the music industry, and much, much more. Plus, I have the second Gen Z related episode coming up next in early January. Tune back in again then to hear what they're all about, straight from the horse's mouth, as they say in England. If you enjoy my podcast, I would love it if you would write a quick review. It makes a big difference to others trying to decide what else to listen to. If you have any comments or suggestions, please share those too via my website, sophiewade.com. I look forward very much to your continuing company as we move further into this new era of business and work in 2023. For weekly video updates, follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter at @SophieWade. For curated, useful articles, research, and information to help navigate this period of transformation, sign up for my Work in Progress newsletter on LinkedIn and my blog, which is available on sophiewade.com and flexelnetwork.com. Until next time, next year.